Okay. Recording has started. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I wanted to welcome everyone out today. It appears that we will have a few more people joining us as we continue on, but I thought we should try and get started on time. We have 30 minutes together, and I have 30 slides to share. So this is going to be awesome. It's going to be like 1 minute a slide, but we've got a lot of content to go over, and hopefully this will be an informative session. I believe it will be. And so I'll jump right in. So today we're talking about cyber crime, cyber security. We're going to give you an opportunity to learn a little bit about what's happening in the workspace and, sorry, the landscape, I should say, out in the world. Just give you a sense of what risks are out there, some of the things that you can anticipate, and maybe even gain some perspective and some insight in terms of what's happening. Then we're going to take our attention and start going to focus it inwardly into our own businesses as to what best practices we should have in place to protect ourselves. And then I wanted to share a little bit about some assessments and compliance. These are just things maybe to consider when you know what's going on in the world and you've had a chance to look at your own practices internally. Maybe turn to other areas where third-party services and or industry experts can provide some assistance, and then we'll consider what next actions we might want to take. So when we talk about the landscape of cybersecurity, what we're talking about is what is the threat? Who is out there trying to steal from us or ransom us or try to do damage to our business, and kind of the method and the madness of it all, and give you a sense of how you should be protecting your business and obviously the reputation of your company. So the landscape is obviously ever changing. When we talk about cyber crime, it's continually on the rise, increasing in Alberta, I believe in Canada, 4x multiple year after year. It's a business, and it's a lucrative one. And why is this? Well, much of what we're doing here with technologies, we're expanding our online presence, and we're expanding online services, which means data is no longer just on premise within your business, within the walls of your own company, but we're moving to cloud services. We're moving our data in more flexible and agile places to share. And so what that means is that there's a lot more access to data than ever before. You can get to information from your tablet, your mobile phone, your computer. And so with more access to your data means it could potentially be more vulnerable to a threat. The other thing too is cyber criminals are no longer the, I don't know, the typical perhaps 40-year-old that's living in his mother's basement trying to hack into your business. These are sophisticated organizations that are well funded, and in some parts of the world are not illegal, meaning you got government funding in terms of what these cyber criminals are able to do. So it's very sophisticated. Crime often goes undetected. Like when you think about it's kind of it's one of those things you want to keep on the down low, right? Like if you were compromised, you don't really want your clients to know, right? If there's been a security breach and you've got to pay out of pocket, or there's like all these challenges that come with it, you don't want the general public to know. It's bad business. And so oftentimes people try and get that, hush hush, and they don't talk about it. It's not publicized. And so some people then get this idea that, well, I'm a small business and this only happens to the big guys. And that's really not true. Large quantities of centralized data, going back to the online world, we got data centers all over the world. And so data is now more centralized, meaning if I can compromise, maybe not the big corporation, if I can compromise a smaller organization, I can still get access to big corporate data. And so these are very much the tactics that are being used. Obviously, mobile access, which I've talked about already, and Internet of Things are really just devices that are connected. They have an IP address, means they have access to the internet, and they can be compromised as well. So a lot of things that are constantly changing. Here are some statistics. I'll touch on a few of these. You can go ahead and read them. But 92% of compromises are due to email phishing. I'll talk to you guys a little bit more about that as we start talking about policies and things like that you should have in your organization. But email phishing is a huge opportunity for businesses, or sorry, for the cyber criminal to access data in your businesses. The other startling stat here is 52% of Canadian companies surveyed have suffered some unplanned system downtime over the past 12 months. So here again, this is like over 50% we're dealing with some level of downtime, right? That might not be a huge compromise. It might not be a business is out of service, but there's impact there, and we're seeing it. And so when we talk about the frequency and the reality of the threat, it's here. You don't have to go very far to find out what's happening. Now, some of the things that have reached the news, and we hear about these all the time, is larger organizations like Boeing and the city of Atlanta, where you have multiple days of downtime or company-wide impact where the entire operation is brought to a halt, and millions of dollars are lost, whether in ransomware buyout or whether in productivity being shut down, or just in the cost of maintaining employee salaries while they can't work. When you look into the specifics, especially as we look at organizations like this, it really doesn't take a lot to cripple a business and put you out of business. When we look at these organizations, you would expect the size and nature of them having, access to, a wide range of funding would have top security. There's a natural flaw in that, and I'll get to that here later. You can have a lot of robust hardware in place, but when it comes to vulnerability, it's always what is your weakest link, and making sure you understand what that is. Cathay Pacific, India. I know here are just, again, a few examples. We had some local ones as well, where it was the McEwen University had a construction project that was ongoing, and the construction company, or an actor portraying the construction company, made a request to have the trust account changed. So millions of dollars, $11 million went into a false trust account. Very difficult to get back. I thought I'd throw in a few of these. This is one that's common right now: COVID cyber criminal tactics. So someone who came in basically get this as a text message. Someone who came in contact with you tested positive or has shown symptoms of COVID-19 and recommends you self-isolate. Get tested. More at here's a wonderful link. So what do? On your mobile phone, you click on the link, it installs something on your phone, and now your phone can be locked and compromised. Tactics like this happen all the time. So let's beware. So how do we keep ourselves protected? What are some of the best practices? Well, I wanted to talk about three main things. One, managing risk policies. This is an important part of educating and creating awareness. The second is protecting your environment with some best practices in terms of security and defense controls that we want to make sure are in place. And then the last is, if you really want this to gain some traction in your business, then you need to have leadership behind you. And so to accelerate how we go about doing these things and putting these things in place really comes about having a culture of security, and I'll talk to you a little bit about that as well. So cybersecurity should be policy driven. Whether you're working with your people or with machines, because machines also can have policies applied to them to act and behave in a certain way. And so therefore you should also have policies for your people to act and behave in a certain way. So it's important that you look at both aspects of your business. So the first is remind, teach, and repeat. It's a bit of tongue-in-cheek here, but you need to keep one eye on your business and another eye on your employees, which means that when we talked about risk and about the level of risk that your company faces, oftentimes, a person would go and their thought would go to, okay, well, I've got a firewall, I've got managed switches, I've got my backup, I've got antivirus. Yes, you do. You have all those things. But where is your data? Is it all on premise? Is it on a laptop? Is it on a mobile device? Is it in the cloud? And who has access to that data? Well, your employees. And how well educated and aware are your employees? Do they understand the risks? Do they understand what things that they should be following? So it's very important that if you can't effectively identify where your data is, you can't protect it. And if you can't effectively teach and keep your employees aware of what the risks are, then they also become a liability. And I've seen it too many times where people like the Susie click everything person, right? Anything that goes in the inbox, they click on it. They're so curious. And it ends up destroying not only them personally, because it can compromise their own personal data, but as the organization as well. So regular training and education really becomes a factor here to make sure that everything that is in place is well protected. When it comes to the devices that we have, this is the other thing, very important when it comes to policies. You want to make sure that, because of the fact that data is so easily accessible now, whether it's your iPad, your mobile phone, a laptop, and we've got people accessing data by so many different means, you have to make sure your data is secure. So knowing where your data is and how people are accessing your data allows you to start asking the questions as to the level of security that you need to have in place. Encrypted portable devices also allows you to ensure that if any one of the devices is stolen or gets lost, that a person isn't able to access that data with because it's fully encrypted. When we talk about any kind of mobile devices or individuals using their personal devices, I've always found that mobile device management, which is an application that allows you to install corporate email, corporate apps, corporate contacts, just anything related to the corporation on a personal device that's owned obviously by the employee, but it's self-contained within its own environment. So in the event that device gets compromised, you can remotely wipe or lock or remove that data, and it's completely isolated from any personal stuff. So these are things that we would be doing in terms of any, bring your own device as an option for businesses to consider. The other thing too is when we talk about different types of applications, we also want to make sure that the company is just not a buffet line of all different kinds of applications, and everyone has the ability to just install whatever app that they want. It really becomes a nightmare, not only for support, maintenance, and trying to secure these applications, but there's no standard in place, and it becomes quite a mess. When it comes to any kind of personal use of corporate email addresses, we need to really put a clamp down on that. So in other words, you shouldn't be using corporate email addresses for like your Netflix subscription, or any kind of personal account. You need to keep those things separate. Anything that's going out there on the corporate side is just going to be something that can be potentially compromised, and then it affects your business. When we talk about sharing data, we've got ERP systems, DMS systems, accounting that's online where we're sharing data. We have some organizations that use have to share large files, right? Email's just not going to cut it. So you have to have an approved method of sharing files, not just within your organization, but outside of your organization. And there's plenty of applications out there that can accommodate. It's just a matter of having one that's approved. Because the last thing you want is for your employees to use their own personal Dropbox account or their personal Google Drive to be sharing data. Again, it all comes back to where is your data? You need to know where it is. You need to know that you have proper systems and procedures in place in order for you to protect it. So those kinds of systems are great, right? Because you can see who's downloaded it, who's accessed it, where they've accessed it from, has lots of tracking and limitations that you can put on the information that you're sharing. So really having a good sense of how you're sharing data and what application and tools you can use is a huge bonus. And so two-factor and password management really comes into play because now that we are accessing our information online and by different devices, we need to really make sure that we've identified exactly who that person is. So you can have a password, that's great, but two-factor authentication is best practice if you're going to be accessing data outside your organization. And really what that means is it allows you to make sure that you are not just providing a password, but some other method of identifying yourself. It could be a text message that gets sent to your cell phone, which is only in your possession. It could be an answer or a question that only you know the answer. There's other different methods that you can use just to authenticate yourself. And when I talk about password management, what I'm talking about here is we don't want to use simple my password or 123 password. We want our users to use complex passwords. So some way around or the tool to help you implement that is password management software so that you can have long, complex passwords that are easily managed because let's be honest, everyone has tons of passwords. It's very hard to remember them all. And so password management tools allows you to have complex passwords and not have to worry about remembering them all. A need to know basis policy here is very important because in essence, what happens is organizations grow, they start to form departments, and before you know it, you're a large organization, many departments, and you come to the realization that the guy that just started yesterday, who's a junior of a junior, has full access to the entire server and all the data that's inside. So that's just the nature of growing. You start small and you start to grow, and you need to start looking at limiting access. It needs to be by default on a need to knows basis. So if you don't need to know, you don't get access. And really start enforcing strict policies around personal and health and financial information. Obviously, those are like gold mines for a cyber criminal. If you can get access to that information, it's amazing what they can do. They can falsify identity, they can sell it on the dark web, they can do a lot of damage. We talked about strong passwords, that's a no-brainer. And then proper termination procedures. So not only as people come into your organization, you need to make sure that you identify specifically what they have access to, but those who leave your organization, you need to have a proper method because again, this is all about compromising, finding weaknesses, vulnerabilities in your system. And if you have a terminated employee that hasn't been around with the business for many, many years, that's a dormant account and it creates a security risk because people can start trying that account, sometimes very difficult to monitor or know because no one's using the account, so they're not actually seeing what might be going on. Once we've got some good policies in place and we're educating, creating awareness, and making sure there's some idea around structure, now it gets into the defense and controls. These are the hardware software pieces that adds the protection. We're right at 2:20, so I'm gonna have to speed up here in order for me to cover everything. So I apologize, but hopefully you're getting some value from what I've shared so far. A layered approach to security really is talking about a hardware layer, a software layer. We want to create a perimeter defense. And so what this means is sometimes we've got to do a full court press. It's an offensive move. We're looking to really put a lot of protection in our environment. So the perimeter is the edge, right? So that's where we have, next generation firewalls. We've got a lot of different other tools to create barriers wherein it becomes very difficult for a cyber criminal to attack us. Endpoint security really talks about anything that's connected to the network. So this can be from a mobile device, a phone, a printer, a scanner, anything that physically gets connected, we need to identify, know what it is, know what its purpose is, and so that we aren't going to be any compromise. There's a lot of copiers that can get plugged into a network, and it all has default settings. They can be compromised, and then through a copier or through a printer, get access to data. Content filtering and email security, these are more of a software typically, but what they'll do is they'll make sure that if we click on a suspicious email, the devices that we have in place and the software we have in place can go out on the internet and verify that that's a safe site and either prevent us or deny us from accessing it. So this is a way for us to make sure that we're protecting our employees. And also for email security, just things like making sure that it's properly scanned, that there's no malware attached, and also making sure that any kind of spam is being captured and quarantined. When we talk about continuing on that road of really protecting our data, data backup is always great to have. We need to have it. We need to have redundancy. We need to have a lot of different layers of different ways in which we're protecting our backup. Once backup, a good backup system is going to allow you that if the system is compromised, like say in a ransomware scenario, and the servers itself are compromised, that if you've got a really solid backup system that allows you to actually capture not just the data, but also the environment, that could help you in your recovery process. So solid backups definitely has to be in place. The physical security of the site is also important. Now, we're talking cyber criminal, so I'm going to skip that, but just think of it in this way. We do a lot of testing in environments, and if a person can walk into your business and sit down at a computer and log into and get into a system, or walk into a server room and have access, like there's been tests enough to know that businesses aren't following proper practices and keeping their environment safe. Admin level access means that sometimes this falls into a default setting when you're setting up new users. So any users that are set up in your account should not have admin. Just think of it. One person's compromised, they have access to the entire network. Mobile device management, we also talked about. This is great in terms of lock it or lose it, because there's so many devices out there. You need to have a way to monitor where is it, who has access to it, and be able to lock it down. And a few other things there: authorized application list. Make sure that you're approving everything that people are using. Now, when we get into monitor to detect, these are more proactive. So we talked about a little bit of the hardware infrastructure. We talked a little bit about the software tools and information that you need. More of a reactionary, right? Like if you lose your data, you got to react to that and go back to your backup and recover it. Monitoring and detecting, these are more proactive. So this is active monitoring. This is pen testing. This is making sure that we lock down the configurations of servers and devices almost in a hardened state, so we can actually identify in how it operates in a normal environment. Because like a ransomware or a crypto locker, what's going to happen there is the cyber criminal is going to get into your server, and then they're going to start encrypting their data, which means that the data is changing. And as that data starts to change and gets encrypted, it then starts to span throughout the entire drive. And so you're having thousands and thousands of documents that are changing. Well, that's a very abnormal behavior. So these types of rapid detection and response systems, threat intelligence, which allows us to be able to identify the normal state of your environment, when those abnormal things start to happen, we get red flags. So this is a proactive way, because oftentimes some people have been compromised and they don't even know it. Some people have been able to sit and wait, actually monitor email, monitor people's activities without their knowledge for days and weeks, excuse me, just so that they can identify the best way to compromise the environment. And so actively monitoring and detecting is a real way for us to be more proactive in our attempt to find people or identify what's going on in our environment. Now, this is all great, right? You can put in a lot of, we can sit on this call for 30 minutes and we can learn all this stuff, but what does that mean unless we go in and start to implement it? Well, it doesn't mean anything. So don't let information sink your business. Don't let sensitive data being compromised or accessed by a cyber criminal lock down your business. Let's accelerate by actually having a management regime. And what this means is that you've taken the first step, or perhaps you've attended cyber, criminal or cybersecurity sessions before, but as soon as you have a good understanding, it's about going back, it's about talking to your management team, talking to your executive team, and putting someone in charge, making this a deliberate part of your business plan. Get buy-in, get commitment from your leadership team. This is, again, about creating a culture here of learning and understanding and making sure that that gets filtered down to everyone. Budget priorities, because, if you build a Fort Knox in terms of security and policies and stuff like that, you can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. So budget your priorities, make sure you put emphasis on the things that matter most, because you could really spend a lot and it's not really giving you the full value that you really need. So be cautious, because there's lots of programs and utilities and security measures you can take, but it is costly at times. The other thing is you should know the rules of the game. So government legislations are enforcing privacy rules and guidelines. There's industry regulations, especially if you are in professional services or health services. When we talk about all of the industry regulations, you have to abide by them. There's codes of conduct that are in place that if you're not abiding by them, then you will be penalized. Client concerns, anything that you are doing is going to impact your clients. And so you need to be aware of what are their expectations. How are they looking at the way in which you should be protecting their data? And if you aren't addressing their concerns, then you're actually going to be in hot water, as it were. Let's do a positive spin on this. Market opportunities. Well, if you can go to market showing that your business is well protected and well secured, and you've complied with government legislations and regulations within the industry, guess what? That could create new business for you, because you start to be represented as a trusted source of within the industry. Here's another tactic about supplying blood because of the COVID-19. Crazy stuff. Assessments and compliance here. I'm going to just go through this really quickly and basically just say, turn to your industry regulators, turn to your associations, business forums, groups. There's a lot of individual organizations that are out there to help you protect your business. And so they already have tools like for self-assessment. They already have resources and libraries to help you identify best practices specifically for your industry. So really make a note of that and reach out to those associations, societies, and groups. What would be the next step? Well, I always like to ask these questions whenever I'm with someone about this is just simple questions. First off, where is my sensitive data located? Who has access? How is my data accessible by others? How can hackers and thieves break in and steal or ransom my data? What will it cost if I'm breached? And how educated and aware are my staff of the threat? So we're right at 2:31. hopefully you've been able to learn something today, creating a business of security, a culture of security, understanding your limitations and priorities. Definitely need to gain insight to what the threats are out there facing your business and seek to work with a trusted advisor to help you through this. Make sure that you don't just leave and not take into consideration the accountability of people, making assignments, working with your leadership team, and then obviously continue to monitor, maintain, and educate your people. We do have as CompuVision a affordable custom fit information security package. This is our Protect Plus. If you have questions, you can always reach out to us on that. Coming up June 3rd, what to consider to keep my business working in the work from home environment. And on the 10th, adaptability quotient. How adaptable is your business as industry leaders use technology for today and tomorrow? That's it. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you attending here today. Hopefully we're able to take some good things away, and we will talk to you soon.